Hello, everybody. This is Peldi again, substitute hosting for Steve. Today, I'm joined by two of my favorite people in the world, Geraldine DeRuiter and Rand Fishkin. But instead of introducing them to you, I will let them introduce each other.
Well, that's very generous of you, Peldi. So, Geraldine DeRuiter is an award-winning author, blogger, travel writer, and soon-to-be fiction writer as well. She runs the Everywhere's blog, which is an award-winning publication. She won a James Beard Award just a couple of years ago for her writing on Mario Batali's sexual abuse scandal, and has continued to contribute wonderful thought pieces in the worlds of feminism, food, travel, lifestyle, and she was also my very first investor at my first company, Moz, supported me for years so that I could bootstrap that business. And I'll let her speak now.
Thank you. Thank you. Welcome, Geraldine.
Thank you. Randy Fishkin started the company Shalmos.
No, what? This is the worst. I've gotten a lot of bad introductions, but that takes the cake.
Rand Fishkin is an entrepreneur and an author and the love of my life. He started a company called Moz when he was fresh out of college. It was originally SEO Moz, and then it turned into Moz. He started it kind of inheriting it from his mother with a ton of debt, and dug it out of debt and turned it into a multi-million-dollar successful VC-backed company. And then left there several years ago after writing a book about his experiences called Lost and Founder. He's an acclaimed speaker. He's spoken all over the world, everywhere from Australia to Slovenia to all over the UK, all over Europe. And he recently started a new company called Sparktoro, which helps marketers in a very new way find the correct audiences that they're trying to target. So it's quite a bit different from SEO Moz, and it's a lot smaller, and it's doing quite well. And he's also doing something very different with investing. So he's trying to reframe the way we look at investing and maybe get people to consider alternatives to VC. He's also a wonderful cook, and he smells really good.
Excellent. Well, that's good to know. That doesn't come across on the podcast, but
it's one of the least important qualities during COVID, but I maintain it anyway.
That's very important. Well, welcome, Rand.
Thank you for having both of us. I'm excited. I don't know if we've ever done a joint conversation like this before.
Well, that's because I'm such an innovator in the world of podcasting. You know, this being my second episode that I ever host, I thought, let's just try something different. So as the audience can understand now, they probably share my excitement about chatting with you today, because I feel like you together bring a wide variety of experiences. And I'm very excited about just spending half an hour with you and having a chat and catching up. So let's start with this. So the software industry, I feel like, has a problem. Well, several problems, but one of them is a bit of exceptionalism. We get all this press about, we're so special, we're the future, software is eating the world, move fast and break things. We get a lot of, there's a lot of love for innovation and how software does everything different, right? Never unprecedented, right? But I personally don't think that's true. I mean, it's just another type of business. You know, we have employees. Well, so what? The pizzeria downstairs has employees. We grow and we have issues. We have customers. We do customer service. We incorporate using the same laws as everybody else. Like, it's actually not that different. So having a software person and a non-software person I'd like to feel like, do you ever talk about this, the differences and similarities of your businesses?
I don't know if it comes up in like a very forthright way like that. Um, I will say that there's a lot of times when we are stunned by what people get away with
Hmm.
in the software world.
Right.
Like it seems like it exists in this parallel dimension where money works differently and where behavior is forgiven in ways that are very strange and different, and it's excused in a different way.
Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, Peldi, the one problem with that the pizzeria has is that every time they want to serve a new customer, they have to make a new pizza. And in software, this is the one big difference, right? Is that the same piece of software that helps customer A helps customer B through Z, helps customer, 10,050. And because of that, you get scale and you get a potential financial windfall in revenue and recurring revenue, which right, Balsamic, your business does, and my business does, my old one and my new one. And I think because of that, there's one of the outcomes is this exceptionalism, this belief that we're so much smarter, we're so much better, we don't have to behave the same way the guys running the pizzeria do, the people in publishing do, the people who make cameras do.
But again, publishing, for instance, right? You print in a book, you print another copy. It's not. It is scalable the same way. Or I'm thinking pharmaceuticals. You make a drug and you print. You make 1,000 pills or 100,000 pills. It doesn't cost.
Pharmaceuticals is definitely a good example because you get to keep selling the same pill over and over to someone, right? There you have a subscription essentially to your. The only difference is pharmaceuticals are very well regulated,
Right?
and software is very unregulated.
Right, but why? I mean, why do you think that is? Is it just because software is younger as an industry?
I think in part, I think also no one in government really understands how it works, right? You have a bunch of
Right.
older politicians who just don't fundamentally get it. And I think there was something recently, I can't even remember what it was, but there was some congressperson who had their phone and was talking to Mark Zuckerberg and was like, how does the, Facebook exist on my phone? Like, how does it work on my phone? And they didn't understand that it was an app that was on your phone. Like they didn't understand the fundamental difference. And I think when you have people who don't get that, you're not going to have that regulation, right? It's going to be unfettered.
Right.
And until, which is funny. Well, it's funny because probably a lot of them don't understand women's anatomies, but they're happy regulating that.
Right, exactly.
That's just another, we could go down that path. But I think that they are happy to let it be kind of the Wild West for right now.
Right. The other point that I would like to make is that it's funny because when I speak of software industry, I don't even think of Facebook and Google and the big guys. I live 100% in the world of small, sort of one founder, less than $10 million revenue software world, right? Where it's I guess you could call it indie, you could call it ISVs, you could call it, I don't know. It's mostly the audience of this Bootstrap podcast. I forget that the big guys exist. I don't even think of them as the software industry. So that's where I see the similarities, I feel, of running a business, a small business like this, like mine, and running, I don't know, a real estate agency, running, right? I feel like that's not that different. We talk about pivoting. Well, lots of businesses have to pivot because they haven't found product market fit, right? All these terms that we think we use, but is it really that different? Or the way they do marketing, right? It's all about talking to your customers, understanding their needs, understanding their mental models, right? Is it really that different?
No, I mean, I don't think so. As someone who's kind of looking at it from an outside
Right.
perspective, I think that when you are running something smaller and you're in touch with your customers and you haven't lost perspective because you're so massive that you're creating, centibillionaires,
Right.
then it is still a real company and it is
Right.
similar to
Right.
other
You
smaller
have
companies. And that's a good thing.
you created the Everywhereist, right? It's you
Yeah.
founded the company. You have a online presence, and you have to understand your audience in order to cater to them properly, right? And all things that we do, and you have a product that you put out regularly, right?
I do. It's strange. I don't think of it like that at all. I
Okay.
don't think of it like a business because uh, I guess I don't give it that much credit. I probably should. I probably should give it more credit than I do.
Well,
That's my own fault. That's my own imposter syndrome.
well, you know what? We get a lot of that in the
Yeah.
software world just as well. I feel like it's a very common thing. Actually, this actually could be a good segue on my next question for you, which is there's this other myth in the software industry about the founder who's a risk taker, and we have fail fast and pivot and I just don't see that in my side of the software world. Like people like me, we're betting the family on
Well,
this little thing that has
yeah, I
3 years.
mean, I think Peldi, you say that you get to ignore or relatively not pay attention to big tech, Facebook, Google, Apple, Amazon, et cetera. But I think that unfortunately, in the tech world and in software, those businesses and the investors behind them, in particular, they get to set the tone. They get to dictate the culture and the ecosystem that we live in. So even as an indie software founder, it is very difficult to get away from, for example, the idea of product market fit or the idea of retention rate and churn rate, the idea of recurring revenue, the idea of scale and growth rate, just all of these concepts that float around. And then the comparison, right? I think writers do this as well. Writers compare themselves to other writers, to other authors, to other people who've been published and had success. And software entrepreneurs, we compare ourselves to each other. Peldi, I think you have a unique ability to resist that, but that's not most of us.
You're right. You're absolutely right. And it took me many years, and also living in Europe, I think is helps me not be on that treadmill. What you just described is what I call the circus, right? There is the hyper growth startups. Then there is all the press that goes around it, the TechCrunch, which, by the way, I don't even know if it's still is it still around, TechCrunch?
Oh
I
yeah.
don't know, right? Then there's all the VCs. It's a whole ecosystem that feeds on itself and needs all this attention and energy in order to continue. And people like us, no one cares about. Well, we don't really care. We don't want to be on the spotlight. We care about making our customers happy, not getting press. But at first, I can see that
But that's
that you do
hard.
want some press.
It's so hard to get away from wanting press and accolades and attention, and believing that that's connected to serving customers well, right? I think
Right.
this is true in your world too. Like being able to say, oh, I don't care what reviews think. I don't care if anyone covers the book. I don't care if it gets attention. I don't care if I get invited anywhere. That's a hard thing to do.
Well, and it's not just something internal, right? It's not just something where I'm like, you know what? I can ignore this and be proud of what I've created because all of those things translate to sales, right? A good review somewhere means that I'm going to sell more books. So
Right.
I can't even ignore it from a pragmatic perspective.
So this is a difference, I guess, in our world, right? Because Peldi, Balsamic, Sparktoro, we can totally ignore 95% of the tech press, which won't send us any business, as opposed to an author where that press will send you business.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or hopefully not, but it could sink something, right? Something truly scathing can really hurt you.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
And something that earns you a lot of attention might not get you sales, but it could get you your next deal or
Right.
an introduction or
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Which is, I guess, true for us as well. I mean, I can understand how, it is a position of privilege where you say, oh, I already have my audience and that's enough for me, right? In the creative world, there was that famous article by Kevin Kelly, 1000 True Fans.
Yeah.
Remember, where you say, you don't really need 1 million people to follow you.
Yeah.
You just need 1,000 people to pay $100, to spend $100 on whatever you produce, whether it's merchandise or music or art, a year, and that's $100,000 a year. That's a good living,
Right. Right.
But again, it feels like you can only really do that after you've gone over a certain hump, where you do have a tight knit group of fans or a community or a customer base that is sort of loyal to you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, going back to your original question around this, why do we have these dominant, whatever, paradigms or cultural institutions in the software and tech world? And I think that that's driven by incentives, right? The venture capital industry, raises tens, hundreds of billions of dollars, and they need to deploy those funds, and they need to have millions of entrepreneurs like you and I competing for that money and trying to become the next Facebook, Google, Apple, Amazon, Uber, WeWork, Airbnb, whatever, or they're not going to have success, right? So they need their model is 1,000 of us are going to fail, 990 or of 1,000 will fail, and 10 of us will turn into interesting companies that actually make them money. And so they need those 1,000 people to be chasing that dream.
Right. Well, so say you don't want to play that game, right?
And we don't.
And you guys don't, and I don't. So,
I mean, I kind of want to play it. We'll talk about that.
Well, no, let's talk about that now. I mean, what is it enticing for you about being?
I mean, I don't want. I should clarify. I would like to sell books. Okay. I do want to do that. Like, I do want to have a successful book. I don't want to do it because I want a lot of money. I want to do it because I want people to read the book I wrote.
Right.
And if I really try and drill down on that, I guess it sort of starts to become like an existential crisis, right? It's like, well, isn't it enough that you wrote the book? Isn't it enough that you did this, right? Isn't it enough that you did that? And you keep moving the goalposts because clearly it's not. Like, it's not enough to write the book. And then it's not enough to get the book deal. Right. And it's not enough to get, a good write-up. It needs to be more and more and more. So if I really try and dial it down, it becomes almost infinitely regressive. And I don't know where.
I mean, part of it is if people buy your book, that must mean that you've written something good and something worthwhile.
And you get to write more.
Yep.
And that's kind of the thing, right? Like, if you don't sell the first one, you don't get further book deals. Whereas I think if you have a company and it fails, you're kind of, at least at some point, some people are allowed to keep going. And then it becomes a question of, who's allowed to fail and who isn't, and where that lies. And like, white male entrepreneurs are allowed to fail a lot.
Especially in the United
States. And it's kind of considered a badge of honor.
Oh my gosh. I saw a little Slack video. It was like a promotional video for Slack, and this person was saying, "Oh, here's the history of Slack, and it started as a video game, and it failed. But then the investors told our founders, you keep the money, you just try something else." And I was thinking, I bet what those, I bet I can tell what those founders look like.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
man, well, it was wasn't it Stuart Butterfield, one of the guys who founded Flickr?
Yeah.
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 Oh,
Yeah.
I mean,
Anyways,
yeah, there you go.
yes. So yeah, that's a very good point, Geraldine.
Yeah. I mean,
You can only,
I don't want to be part of some sort of weird, I don't know, sick cog, or I don't want to be
right.
part of that. But I want to sell my next book
Yeah, you have to
so
be
that I can
able,
sell another one,
right.
So
And I feel
that's,
like it's, you're right. It's just, and it's the same this with software when you're starting up. If you do get written up on TechCrunch, even if you don't want to play that game, it is probably gonna, change
yeah,
the trajectory of your thing. It can enable you to later on do it for the love of the craft. But at the
right,
beginning, you do need to play the game a little bit.
yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's pretty tough as well, especially knowing as an indie founder and indie dev that your work is not backed by tons of money that will let you, for example, acquire customers at a loss for a long period of time,
Right.
right? You have to be profitable, but you're competing against probably many people who don't need to have that constraint. You know that you don't necessarily need the press, but you also don't know whether you're missing out because somebody else is getting it. So there's, it's tough to not play in that world, but be in that world.
Yeah. Yeah. I get it. Totally. Um, that, to be completely fair, um, I can imagine that going the VC route is also not easy, right? You've done both, Rand.
Yeah.
Tell us about it.
Well, so let's see. First off, everything okay? You realize there's like a recording and people listening and watching?
I do.
Okay.
I also realize that this is kind of a loaded topic, so I'm just giving you some emotional support before you go into
Oh,
it.
that's
Oh, you don't realize I have to have this conversation every day.
no. I don't want the whole story. I want just, if you
The
can go
painful
back
part.
to the beginning
Yeah,
and remember what a time suck it is to pitch.
sure. Yeah. I mean, yes, it is. And it's also a pure ego game, right?
Uh-huh.
So it is playing to your ego. You got an introduction to this fancy partner at this fancy firm that funded these fancy companies that you've heard of. Oh man, I remember I called Geraldine before we were married, right? And you were my girlfriend. Oh, Sequoia wants to talk to me. I'm going to drive down to their offices in Menlo Park. And oh my God, I'm on actual Sand Hill Road and it's filled with, well, it wasn't filled with Teslas yet because there's no Tesla, but it's filled with whatever fancy Ferraris and shit. And then you go to these low slung office buildings with, ludicrously attractive young women who man all the desks, and then these old fuddy-duddies behind there who schedule you for an hour but book you in 20 minutes late, and then kick you out after 20 minutes because they're not interested,
Right, because you're nobody.
and it's
it's fascinating.
and sometimes a meeting feels good and you're like, oh, I think they're interested, and then if they don't call you, it's not like romantic dating where it has that sort of ego boosting. Oh, I'm excited because maybe they're into me, but maybe they're not. And will they call? And when they call, will they say, let's have another meeting? Or it's
right. So that's interesting. It's funny because I have a completely different experience with VCs. I mean, the first time I got a call from a VC, my knees were shaking because it was like, these people I've heard these people are amazing, right? They have the key to unlock my future. And then I had another call and another call, and they're all exactly the same. They're all saying exactly the same thing. So now I don't even take the call anymore. I say, let's do it via email. Just tell me what makes you special. And they all answered the same exact thing. And then I don't know, maybe it's a recent thing, but the people that contact us are like 19-year-old, MBA graduates, or 22, 25.
Right.
they're the assistant who has to pitch a million different companies.
Yep.
And
Yep. And
so,
they're a lot of them are just intelligence gathering, right? So like
yeah,
when we became part of a venture portfolio, one of the things that all those young associates do is they call a lot of companies in the space and then they get data on them. So for example, at Moz, one of the nice things that we got to know was many of our competitors' revenue, because our venture firms had associates that reached out and talked to them and got all these
they
numbers.
put it in the
So a lot of it
database.
is
Yep.
competitive intel gathering under
Yeah.
the guise of
Exactly.
interest.
Exactly. Blah, blah. Sorry. It's just
I know
not
you're
for me.
shocked. You can't believe it.
Not
Who,
for me.
who in
Not
the
for
tech
me.
world would be so ethically flexible?
I guess that's their value add that they have. Anyways, whatever. Um. All right. All right. Let's see. Let's see. Another thing that we have in common as founders of small businesses, or doing something on our own, is that you're really your own boss, and that is great at times.
For some of
Uh,
us.
but it's also not so great. How do we get, especially now that there is, in this pandemic, which has brought even more loneliness? How do you guys deal with the ups and downs of the motivation, energy, productivity?
I don't
If you're a
experience any
solo
of that. It's all
founder,
great. I'm a wonderful boss.
right? Who do you talk to? Is it lonely at the top? I guess you have each
I,
other. I know I
I'll,
Is it
use
I'll,
is,
my
is it
wife a lot.
lonely at the middle third? Like what?
I think yeah, Geraldine struggles with this much more than I do. And interestingly, my co-founder Casey has occasionally mentioned that he struggles with it as well. He and I talk every now and then about how this, a big part of being a founder is managing your own psychology, right? Being able to effectively look at a week that's not going well and not feel 10 times worse than as good as you feel when you have a good week, right? And
Yep.
being able to see the long term, right? To be able to look back over 6 months or 12 months of progress and say, hey, we have come a long way. I look at whatever the draft that I had 6 months ago, and that was a piece of crap. And look, today it's much, much better. I look at the piece of software we had. I look at the revenue run rate we had. I look at the number of customers. I look at whatever, the content we've created. And I say, oh, okay, I can see that even though each individual day might feel good or bad, over time it compounds.
But
That works.
we in software, we have this ability to ship even little things. And so we have a feedback loop, right? It's not like Geraldine can ship 2 pages at the time of the book.
Right. No, that's exactly it. And when I get, oh gosh, this is so hard to talk about. I want to talk about it. It's so hard to put into words, which is bad because I'm supposed to be able to put things into words for my career. So it's very insular, right? Like you spend all this time alone with this manuscript, and there is no feedback. And I could be getting feedback along the way, but it wouldn't make sense because it's like, well, here's a fragment of a chapter, and here's another fragment. And I guess I could be sending it to my agent, but when I've done that historically, she's like, I need more. I don't, I want the whole thing. And when I feel really down, I'll write a blog post, and that'll kind of make me feel,
So that you can
more.
ship it and get
Yeah.
feedback on it and get a boost that way.
Yeah. And
Right.
I am very project oriented, and I'm very much a completionist. So I need to do that. I need to feel like I've completed something. So working on a big project is agonizing for me. It's really, really hard. And I think the other thing that's really difficult is, I am this extrovert who's been stuck at home for a year and stuck inside my own head for a year. And I'm very good at being accountable to other people, but not good at being accountable to myself. And so there are days when I wake up and I haven't accomplished what I want to. And I realize that the thing that's holding me back from that is me.
Great. Awesome.
And that sends me down a spiral. So, you know, this poor guy has walk by and I'm just sobbing, and he's like, what's wrong? And I'm like, well, I'm an abject failure. Right? Like, that's what's wrong. Like, you want to know what's wrong? The thing that I have set out to do with my life, I have failed to do it. Like, what could be more terrible than that? So I'm just insufferable. Nobody wants to hang out with like a writer who doesn't like themselves. Oh my God.
Not in first draft mode.
Oh.
Geraldine, this is
Once-
great.
Oh my God. Oh, I don't even want.
This is wonderful because it confirms that we're not that special in software, because we have exactly the same issues. When you're building,
Oh my God.
especially if you're building a 1.0 of a product, it's going to take you a year. It's going to take you 2 years, and you have zero feedback about it, right? You can't ship it at all. Now, one thing that helped me back in the day was to have a group of 4 or 5 peers who were also working on their 1.0 and also struggling for a year and couldn't ship anything. And we would constantly show each other fragments and, you know, crap, but at least everybody was doing the same thing. So the expectations were good. Is there such a thing as like a writer group? Does that happen?
You mean my secret women's writers cabal that I, you know,
Oh, you do have
swore a
one.
blood pact to never speak about?
Okay.
No, that doesn't exist.
Oh, but why can't you? Wouldn't that help?
No, that honestly, having writers groups has been, and Rand knows, I think that there's nothing that saved my sanity more in the last couple of years. And that's what you need to do. That's what I highly encourage anyone to do, right? Find your people.
Right. You get accountability, you get unconditional,
Yeah.
constructive feedback, loving feedback.
Yeah.
Right?
Even if it's not, and even if you're not comfortable sharing your work, right? Even if it's just, hey, like, let's make a, like, what are your goals for this week? What are you doing? Like, let's, you know, share that just via email. Just kind of this, you know, acknowledgement of what we're doing.
Right.
And I think just that feels grounding in a way.
Right. What do we call those in the software industry now? Mastermind groups? I don't know.
Oh God.
I don't know. I don't know the terminology. Sorry.
I think you might be right.
Yeah, I call them friends.
Yes. Remember that concept?
I mean, I think that this is one of the things that's challenging, right? Is that the software industry has to deal with the sort of historically toxic masculine environment that we all culturally grew up in, where you're not supposed to have whatever close friends that you talk about your emotions with. And so you have to have podcasts in order to have these kinds of discussions, right? And you have to have mastermind groups, and you have to have, you know, whatever participatory communities where you pay $500 a year to be part of this exclusive group of other entrepreneurs like you, and you're a very special hand-selected crowd. But it's so that you can have a peer group,
right?
And that's, I don't know. For
But
whatever reason, it's tough for men to build.
Right now, you have a co-founder. Do you and Casey do this for each other?
Yeah, I think a little bit. Casey's, I don't know exactly how to describe him. He is definitely most of the time more.
He's a grumpy old man trapped in a young man's body.
Yeah, that's a good description of Casey. But I would say he's very willing, able, and happy to put his head down and just sort of work on a problem for a long time solo. And then when he's ready, he wants to have a conversation about it, and not often before. You know, right now he's working on like all this demographic data in Sparktoro, and he's basically just like, don't email me, don't talk to me, no calls, no meetings. I'll tell you when I'm ready to talk again.
He's in the flow. I see.
Okay, that's great. That's fine.
Yeah, I think he has, I would say that there's a bit of stoicism there.
Yeah.
But he also has very good boundaries, and he doesn't have a problem with you expressing emotion. And I think that's what's critical. I think,
Yeah.
he is not outwardly perhaps
Mhm.
as expressive as you, but he doesn't police how you are.
Yeah.
And I think that
That's
that
good.
empathy and understanding is what's really
That's
important.
good.
And you both have that for each other. So I think that's a big reason of why it works.
But we're good. I mean, this is one of the things I think is so incredibly difficult. And I have a tremendous amount of empathy and sympathy for Geraldine because, and writers of all kinds, because in those creative endeavors, right, Peldi, you are doing it solo. It is just you and the work. And you don't have someone like that who's, helping to hold you accountable until you get your editor and you've got your publisher agreement, right? Um, you don't have someone to have those conversations about the work, right? So Casey and I can bounce things off. If things aren't feeling good to either of us, we can have a talk. If I told him, hey, I need to have a call with you this afternoon because I'm just feeling
Mhm.
in the mud, he would absolutely take it and he'd help me, right?
Yeah.
And this is I think one of the reasons that one of the few very good pieces of advice that even the venture capital tech industry gives is find yourself a co-founder.
Yeah, well, as a solo founder and
I
proud,
know.
my solution is to have a very good friend who also owns his own business. He has a graphic design consulting business. And we do a quarterly meeting with each other
Nice.
where for 1 hour I will talk and the other hour he talks, and we have the same structure. It's a one-on-one review, and we give ourselves goals for the next quarter, and we have a work session and a personal section, which is
Nice.
mostly about what how much weight do we want to lose in the next quarter. um but that's been very easy and very very good for me, so it's a good substitute.
Yeah,
Even
I
if he
think that's
doesn't
wonderful.
know the
People,
everyday ups and downs of the business, we do once a quarter is good enough,
I
I
mean, this
feel
is a
like.
tough thing. I feel like there are a lot of founders and you know people who work solo who try and do this with their partner, their romantic partner.
Yeah, yeah,
And I don't know
no, no,
how it
my
is.
wife has heard a lot about balsamic over.
Right. Yeah. And I don't know how it is for you and Mariah, but for Geraldine and I, we sort of discovered, I can't remember when it was. I think it was the first year of Sparktoro where Geraldine was like, I don't want to hear anymore about how Sparktoro is going and like not
Oh,
doing.
I want to qualify
Okay,
or
you
clarify
tell
that
exactly what it
because
was.
it was every day you would wake up and be like, oh, honey, I don't know. And I was like, okay. After like 3 months, I was like, dude, you either need to tell me more good news or just stop with the doom and gloom because I know it's not that bad. And so yeah, we
No,
had
I
to
hear
sit
you, it
down
can
with.
be
Now he
draining.
doesn't even tell me good stuff, so
Yeah, it can be
I don't even
draining
get to
on
hear anything.
on the receiving end, because you have all that empathy, so you feel, and you don't know the details, so you might think that it's even a bigger deal than it is, right?
Well, so Rand does frame things as being worse than they are. We have
Uh,
learned that. Like he is
Dramatic.
a very harsh judge. And on the flip side, he has to deal with me. I'm like, I don't want to hear about how Sparktoro's, having a rough day. And then I come to him just just abject like existential crisis of what am I doing with my
Right.
life?
Right.
I have failed, so which is fair. That's fair what we
Yeah,
do.
I
I think
agree.
it's
I agree. You got a
balanced, so
good
it's okay.
balance. Well, listen, time is flying, so I want to wrap up with a couple of very practical questions. So, Geraldine, I'll start with you.
Okay.
Completely unrelated to everything that we've been talking about, but um, I am in a position now that my company is growing, and we put out a lot of content, blog posts, newsletters. The website is growing in number of pages, etc. And we feel like we should hire a professional writer or a professional editor.
Okay.
Now, we don't have enough work for two people. We think we barely have enough work for one person. Does one person that can do both editing and writing exist?
Who's creating your content now?
Mostly me.
Okay.
And then we have a couple of people we have an education team, and they do a lot of writing.
And
Um,
how much time is that taking of those people's schedules?
I don't know, not a lot. I think maybe we put out, I don't know, 5 new pieces of content a month.
And do you want to continue to do that? Do you want to up the
We
increase?
want to make it better. And also we, like, for instance, we have some tweets that we schedule out to post,
Okay.
and we don't know what we're doing.
Okay.
We want somebody who's good at writing tweets
Yeah.
and can create 20 of those, quickly.
Yeah. So
And
how much?
also, I think we want our we've been scrappy for 12 years. Now we're a little more mature. We want to look a little better. We
Yeah.
want to catch more typos than we do right now.
Yeah. I I think you could hire, I mean, if you have the budget and if you want to, I think you could hire a content manager who would
Okay.
create in-house content and kind of oversee your brand messaging and uh write your, either write tweets or copy edit the tweets that you do have going out, kind of create some consistency of messaging
Right.
across the board. And either take over, if the blog posts aren't too technical, I
Right.
assume that they might not be. I
Well,
don't
some of
know.
them are about UX, so you have to know what this is about. But other
Okay.
ones are about our company culture. We can have a conversation 5 minutes, and then this person
Okay.
can write about it, I think.
Okay, so that might be a little trickier. Taking over the company culture stuff, that might be easier. Finding someone who could
Right.
write specifically about UX, you're getting into a specific skill set there, so that
Right.
might be slightly more
But they could edit what
complex.
we could
They could
edit the
edit,
part and then
exactly.
write
They
some.
could.
So the job title is called content manager.
You could have
Yeah.
I would say a content, and it could even be like content / brand manager or
Okay.
something like
It
that.
could be content / social media manager.
Yeah, that's what
Okay.
I was thinking too.
Okay. We do have we wrote a set of guidelines for writing.
That's
Um,
perfect.
and they're pretty good, but they could probably take them over and improve them, right?
Exactly. Yeah, they would probably kind of refine your voice stock,
Right.
and just make it a little bit cleaner, and that can help basically everyone at the company when they're
Right.
creating
Right.
content as well. If you wanted, yeah, it would depend on what you wanted, but that could be a part-time or a full-time position.
Interesting.
Yeah.
One concern that I have is that once we have this person, does it mean that everything has to be approved by them in order to go out? Because if so, they can never take vacation, and I don't like that.
No, it doesn't. But
You get to design it, man.
yeah, you really get to communicate with them about that.
Do it in the job description.
Understand that if a tweet goes out and there's a typo, they might be upset by that. Or if something happens, and I don't think that your company culture would reflect on this, so I think it would be fine. If something happened and something went out and it was a problem and it wasn't cleared by them, that could create some friction, right?
Yeah,
They
of
would
course,
be like,
we'd have
hey,
to set
like
the
I didn't have,
expectation that, we're not going to blame
Yeah.
you if you weren't involved. Okay.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I mean, to be honest, if it were me, one of the things that we did at Moz in the early years was I had someone who was content and social media manager, and that person did not review everything that I published, but she would let me know when I made a mistake or when something needed to be edited. She would just like go back and edit my stuff after
nice.
it had come out.
Yeah.
Nice.
And that we just had a comfortable agreement. We knew that, hey, Rand likes to publish at 1 a.m. He likes to say,
Right.
share stuff unedited. So that's fine. Just make it clear up front.
And there's trust because you were the head of the company. I will say the only time that this has ever come back in a way that bothered me was I was the copy editor on something, on a big project, and the exec didn't run something by me. And then we were in a meeting and there was a very blatant copy editing problem. and they blamed me
Oh,
in front
come
of the client.
on.
Yeah,
Oh,
and it
jerk.
was really, and it was fine. They
Come
could have just
on.
ignored it, but they were like, "Oh, copy
Yeah.
editor," because they didn't want to be embarrassed.
Oh,
by it.
boo-hoo.
So that just feels bad. You know,
That
that
sounds
feels,
like
I didn't care, but it felt uncomfortable. So don't, make sure you can avoid those situations, but I don't think you ever would, because you guys are a good supportive company. So
What this guy's name rhyme with Pelon Rusk?
it does not. But if you want more tips on what the job description, what
Yeah,
things you
if
might want to
you
include,
want to
send it to us. Yeah.
send us the job description. We'd be happy
Hey,
to look it
don't forget we're on a podcast. You just made an offer to all the listeners.
Ah,
over.
All right.
Peldi.
Yes. Okay.
Solamente per te, vabbè.
All right.
Sponsor.
Okay, last question, because really we're over time, but I
Okay.
want to give Rand just 1 minute to pitch Sparktoro, because it's still a new service, and specifically how can it be useful to bootstrappers who don't have a lot of money? Do you guys have a deal or a way for them to
Yeah.
try it?
So we have about 35,000 people who use the product today. We've only been around for a year, but 4,400 of those people use the free version.
Okay.
And so you can go to Sparktoro and just try it and play with it for free. And the biggest thing that I would recommend for folks is, if you can find a way to describe the audience you want to reach, your potential customers.
What is it? What is Sparktoro? What is it?
Yeah. So
how can it help?
this is exactly what it is. If you have a way to describe your potential customers, like, I sell software to architects,
Okay.
I sell software to indie game developers, I sell software to fiction authors,
Okay.
whatever it is, whatever you're making, if you can describe your audience, your potential customers, the people you want to reach, Sparktoro can give you lots of information about them. Sparktoro can tell you which podcasts they listen to, what YouTube channels they subscribe to, what press publications they read, what websites they visit, what social accounts they follow. And then you can go do marketing of all kinds: advertising, paid, organic marketing, outreach, pitch to be on their podcast, right? Of all kinds in those places, and then reach the people who really matter. Geraldine, for example, was working with the Seattle Rep Theater Company. She's on the board there, and the Seattle Rep is looking for, hey, how do we reach people and tell them that we're coming back next year and get theater audiences involved? Oh, Sparktoro can tell us, who is a theater patron. You can plug in something like the Seattle Rep social account and see, here's what people who follow theater in Seattle also read, listen to, watch, follow, pay attention to. Now I can go do marketing in those places.
Yeah, so you find the sort of the thought leaders or the influencers for your audience, so that then you can learn from them or pitch to them or pay them, advertise with them, and
or
sponsor
plug them in
their.
as them into your Facebook ad campaign,
Right.
whatever it is. But yeah, so I think of influencer, tragically, as like half-naked people who take off their shirt around beaches and have six packs.
Which we have no
not the
problem with.
Instagram influencers.
Yeah. Sparktoro doesn't help you with that.
Okay, that's
But
fine.
we will tell you, hey, here's this niche publication that UX professionals read, and so balsamic. Maybe you want to think about sponsoring that publication. Maybe you want to think about pitching it. Maybe your new content person should write an article for that publication.
Nice.
That kind of stuff.
And so there's a free plan. How does that work?
All you need is an email address. You just start searching, plug in your email, and you can get a free Sparktoro account.
And how is it limited compared to the paid one?
The results are limited, and you get 10 searches a month for free.
Okay, but still, that's a lot. That seems like a lot.
This is why a lot of people. So we made the free plan much more generous when the pandemic hit.
Oh, I see.
Because we were basically like, oh man, nobody's gonna have any money to buy this thing, because back in March, April, we were panicking.
Right.
Last
Plus,
year.
it's a fairly new service.
It's
right?
totally new.
Yeah,
There's no word to describe what we do.
Yeah.
So it's a little challenging.
Right. And it's very applicable to lots of people. So it's kind of hard to market, right? Because it's a horizontal.
Their positioning is a real challenge, right? Like for Geraldine's book, you know who your audience is going to be. For Sparktoro, Oh man, the New Zealand Board of Economic Trade and Development is a
Right.
client, and so is
People who like marshmallows.
Right. All right, guys. I would talk to you for hours, but that's all the time we have for today. So thanks again, Geraldine and Rand, for being on the show.
It was our pleasure, Peldi. Anytime you want to do this again, audience or no, you just let us know.
Lovely, wonderful. All right.